Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. And today we're going to be talking about mental health as I am joined by family physician and author Nghi Dang. Nghi grew up in Vietnam, but moved to the States when he was 7. During the pandemic, he saw an uptick in visits for mental health between children as well as in adults. So what he did is he wrote a series of short stories to highlight this and to help parents open the dialogue with their kids about mental health. Nghi has 10 years of experience as a family physician. So we're going to be talking to him about his book series and anything else he wants to talk about. So Nghi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Just like you introduced very nicely, I'm a family medicine doctor. I've been practicing for over 10 years now. In my practice, I do inpatient, outpatient as well, meaning work in the hospital as well as in the clinic. I have been married for 6 years now. I have 2 sweet little girls. They're the reason why I actually wrote my series, is for their generation to have more understanding of mental health than maybe our generation.
Well, tell us about what you saw that made you want to write your book as a family physician and who your target audience is for this book.
Yeah, no problem. So, during the pandemic, not just my practice, but in general, everyone saw more depression, more anxiety, more just mental health visits to their office, ranging from kids to adults. Prior to the pandemic, we all see a decent amount of mental health visits, but since the pandemic, there's been a really high rise in our visits for mental health. People stress about the pandemic, without the lockdown, people are just having a hard time adjusting to the pandemic. The main reason why actually inspired me to wrote this series was, I had a visit with one parent. He brought in his daughter. They've been doing homeschooling since the pandemic, and talking to her and her dad more, she endorsed some thoughts of suicide because she's just having a hard time adjusting to homeschooling. She misses her friends. She hasn't been able to see her friends and kind of just have the social norm that a normal kid would normally have. After that visit, I came home and I saw my 2 little girls, and it just hit me hard, seeing that that potentially could be my kids. That's when I decided, I really needed to do something to help educate the public, especially allow for a dialogue between parents and their kids about mental health. Growing up, I'm sure most of us never really talked to our parents about mental health because it's a topic that's pretty difficult to bring up to your kids. Being a parent myself, I think that's a very difficult topic to just spring on your kids. So the purpose of this book was actually, I wrote the series aimed more for middle grades, maybe 5th through 8th grade, where they're mature enough to kind of understand the content, and 2, it'll allow the parents to kind of segue into any mental health discussions. They can just discuss what their children read in the book. So it'll be an easier segue to kind of have a more open dialogue about mental health in children. It's hard, which is, like I said before, it's hard to discuss without being awkward. So hopefully the book will be an easy segue for that.
Well, talk about how you came up with the stories for the book.
Yeah, so the stories actually are a combination of my own life experiences, things I've been through, as well as the stories of my patients that kind of stuck with me through the years. So, I took some creative liberties, but basically I combine all the stories into something more comprehensive in my book series. So growing up, I just like you talked about, I was born in Vietnam. My family moved here when I was 7. Just but not just to me, but for most immigrants, we all experience similar circumstances of not knowing the language, a change in the culture, trying to adjust to the new culture, being bullied, being discriminated. I mean, that's pretty much the same story for the majority of immigrants. So I kind of took those stories and experience that I have, and combined them with the stories of my patients that that stuck with me through the years, and turned into this series. I mean, like I said, I took some creative liberties, changed the stories a little bit to make it flow more, but all the feelings, the emotions, the thoughts that each of these characters have are all 100% real.
Speaking of the characters, tell the listeners how you came up with the characters for the book series.
So the characters, I decided to make them animals instead of humans, just kind of to take some tension off of any potential issues that may arise if I use human characters. So instead, I decided to use the 12 zodiacs, which if you read the book, each character is a different animal from the Chinese zodiac signs. That's how I came up with the different characters.
Is this your first time writing a children's book, or?
Yes, it's actually my first time writing. By trade, I'm a family doctor, so I'm not an author in any means. So this is the first time me just kind of diving into storytelling and publishing.
So you talked about struggling with mental health growing up yourself. You want to kind of tell the listeners and kind of talk about your different struggles with mental health?
Yeah. Like I said, when I first moved here when I was 7, it was a big, big change from the not known single word of English to being thrown into a school of like predominantly Caucasians, where I was like the only kid, the only one out. So that was very difficult. I mean, it's a sore topic, but I remember back in Vietnam, I used to be one of the top students in my school. And then transitioning to the States, went to being like the worst student in class because besides for math, every other topic I had no idea, and I couldn't follow along, didn't know how to do the assignments. It was rough. I mean, my parents were, still trying to make ends meet, trying to make a living to kind of put all of us through school. Remember, I used to turn on the shower and go in the shower and cry in the shower so my parents wouldn't hear me. I remember I was just thinking, why did we move here? Things were fine. I didn't want to be in the States, and it was a struggle. I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. No one understood me. I didn't want to stress out my parents. They made a big sacrifice to move here to give us a better life. And I don't want them to be kind of regretful of doing it, seeing their kids struggle so much.
What advice and tips can you give any listeners out there who might be going through mental health challenges?
I think the biggest takeaway is that a lot of times, even as a doctor, I see that there's a lot of separation between mental health and physical health. Like you get a diagnosis of depression, anxiety, they treat that a lot differently than, if you for like diabetes and hypertension or stroke or, heart disease. So they treat the physical conditions as if it's like a separate thing from mental conditions. And the biggest takeaway I wish, people kind of spread is mental health and physical health are one and the same. So I wish like they wouldn't really have the stigma of getting this mental health diagnosis, and really mental health should be just your physical health. So I wish they would eliminate that stigma where it's treated so much differently. I just wish it was treated as just a medical condition, whether it's physical or mental, it's just your medical condition. I think that would be the biggest takeaway, is to kind of just erase that stigma where it's two separate things. It's really one and the same. I mean, your physical health starts with your mental health.
What advice can you give parents about opening a dialogue of having a discussion with their kids regarding mental health?
Yeah, like I touched earlier, it's a difficult subject for anyone, especially parents to speak with their children about. The biggest advice I can give is just to be there for them and just to validate their feelings instead of trying to come up with answers all the time. I think as a parent, we always try to fix, problems for our kids and have solutions and kind of know everything. The biggest takeaway, I think it's okay not to know everything, as long as you just validate what your kids are feeling. Going back to myself, I mean, I didn't really need my parents to have all the answers. I just needed more of them to validate how I was feeling and validate my struggles and just know, I understand what you're going through. It must be really tough. We'll get through this. We'll try to come up with some plan, but you don't have to have all the answers.
Do you have any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about?
Well, this book series, it's a series of 8 stories. I'm just releasing them one at a time. So my second book is coming out at the end of this month. So how the stories are designed is that it's a progression of the year for the main character, whose name is Max. He starts at 6th grade. And as we progress the year, makes new friends. But each book actually pivots to a different character and will be in that character's perspective. And the reason I wrote it like that is to show kids, now with social media, everyone has this perfect life, image on social media. I wrote it in different characters' perspective to show kids that that's not really true. Everyone has their own struggles. Everyone has their own, demons that need to deal with. No one's life is perfect. So it kind of gives them a glance into these different characters' perspective and thoughts, and see that what the other character's opinion about them is probably not correct because they're not living their life and they're not having to experience those struggles that character is experiencing. So that was the purpose of the book, kind of just pivot from different characters' own perspective, and just to kind of see what, look into their minds and see what their thoughts are. So I thought it was kind of cool idea to just have those characters, look into their own thoughts.
Well, tell us the name of the book, how people can pick it up, and throw out any contact information that you have.
Yeah, so you can find more information on the book on www.adventuresofmaxandfriends.org, or just type in Google The Adventures of Max and Friends, and then my website should come up. And then you can browse the website. It'll have the release date of of each book and when they will come out. And then if you want, you can purchase and see what it's all about.
Close us out with some final thoughts, maybe something that I failed to touch on, or just any final thoughts that you might have for the listeners.
My final thought, I just more like a final advice is, just remember that you're not alone. There are a lot of resources and help out there. So you don't feel like you're trapped and can't get any help. Just remember there's a lot of resources available. All it takes is just that one first step to open up, and there's a lot of resources available. So if you're in a dark place, know that there's other people who's been there as well. So just don't be afraid to ask for help. You're not alone. What you're feeling is not abnormal. It's actually a lot more common than you may think.
Ladies and gentlemen, The Adventures of maxandfriends.org. Check out the book. Give it to anybody that you know that might be struggling with mental health issues, or if their kids are struggling, make sure you tell them about Nghi's book, and maybe it can help them out. Also, be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode after listening. Nghi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being on the show.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.